Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. So I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Top Global Startups. We have an incredible company named Vernon O'Donnell as his CEO of Voxel, a San Francisco-based company. He's executive with broad B2B SaaS experience, and we're going to talk a little bit about his background because he's got an interesting background from the Defense Department and the reserves all the way to where he is today. Hi, Vernon. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Gary. Thank you so much for having me today.
So tell me a little bit about it. So how in the world did you get interested in Russian and Eastern European studies in Indiana?
Oh, wow. I wasn't expecting that question out of the gates. So I served in the military, enlisted when I was 17 to help pay for college, ended up going to Iraq in 0304. And so I got interested in Eastern European Central Asian studies for two reasons. One, strategically, I thought long-term I'd stay in the DoD. And so I was talking to multiple three-letter agencies post-service about that. And Uzbekistan and the other stands are very geographically well-positioned. And so that was one. But then two, I took a Russian literature class and just fell in love with the Russian class.
Did you learn how to speak Russian at all?
I studied Uzbek, actually. That was the language of choice for me. So,
now, how do you say like hello in Uzbek?
I knew that. See, this is going to kill me. It's been 25 years, 23 years since I've studied, and it's a tough language. So I only remember a couple of words. So I'm not going to be able to take us on a path. But Minham was basically hello. So I can remember the simple parts.
Yeah, I worked with the ISTC, so I spent time in Russia myself. So I actually worked with an intergovernmental agency, and I worked with former scientists and to keep them from going to bad places. So it was very interesting. I was a contractor. My company won the contract, but it's really interesting because I learned how to speak Russian and spent time in the stands. Actually, went down to Kazakhstan and all over the place, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, places like that. And yeah, quite interesting. So you did that, and so you did a Bachelor of Arts degree, right? And then you got your Master's of Arts in public culture. And then you became you were a public affairs officer, right, in the reserves. How was it transitioning from, going to places like Iraq, going over and coming back into normal society? And, both are normal in a different way, right? But how was that?
Yeah, it was jarring for a couple of reasons. So when I finished my tour in Iraq, it was spring of 04. And I actually had to come back and finish one semester of undergrad. And so I was a 24-year-old war veteran on campus. Bush administration won. That was an election year. So it was a very interesting time to be that age with that experience in an undergraduate environment. So certainly not without its cultural challenges. And I remember taking political science classes where people were teaching about battles that I was actually in. And I'm like, yeah, that's not entirely how that played out.
I had that happen too. It was funny because you get into these discussions, and I got into it with a professor. Did you do that at all? Like I had a real
frequently, yeah.
And I dropped out of the course. So I was taking a course, and the guy was like, his way was right. I said, it's not like that. It's 100% not like that. I don't want to be rude, but seriously, you're wrong. Oh, no, I know this. That's why I have my PhD. I said, well, I don't know where you got your PhD, dude, but you didn't do it through the School of Hard Knocks.
That's right. And actually, it's funny you say that because so my master's, I was actually in a PhD program. And I realized within my first few weeks of my first semester that I was not going to be long for academia. for a lot of those reasons, I'm like, maybe I made a mistake. I had this like grand vision of I'm going to teach pedagogy and like enlighten young minds. And I got there and I'm like, no, this is kind of the same political machinations as any corporate environment for far less pay and far more bullshit. You swore up front, so I'm assuming I'm good for that. So far more BS. And so I was like, I'm going to cut it at the masters and pivot to public life and ideally make a little bit more money with a little less headache.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. But it is interesting. I don't, for me, it was the transition coming back. I was 12 years over, right? And the transition coming back over, it was so different culturally. Like it took me a while to like the simple things that should be simple were hard, and the things that should be hard were really simple. There was like weird actually coming back.
Yeah, for sure.
So you went to Granger, you did that. You went to Apollo Education. And so as you went down through this journey, how in the world, did you go down and, went to a Hypori, but how in the world did you get to Voxel? What was that? Were you the co-founder of Voxel, or what?
No, I was actually brought in by the board to help scale the organization up. So at Apollo, big company, they own University of Phoenix. We were trying to spin out some of the tech as a standalone company. Didn't really play out, but that's how I got into software. And that put me on the radar from Vista Private Equity, went to their portfolio company, went through a bunch of their training, scaled up. So learned, I would always say working at Vista was like going to do a PhD in software operations. Some people love it. Some people hate it. I liked working there. I felt like I learned a ton. But I always kind of done the private equity, tear things down, spin it out sort of side. So I went to Project 44. That was my first growth company. Hypori is the president. So the background in computer vision, the sports tech company I was at was a computer vision company, scaled a company at P44. And the investors here were looking for somebody who understood supply chain, understood computer vision, and knew how to actually execute the business to get it to where it needed to go with the great tech we had in place.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I've been involved in tech in Silicon Valley myself for 40 years and 17 startups. And as we go down through this journey, one of the one things, is that you don't know because you see the changes taking place. But on the AI side, 29 years ago, when I got involved in expert systems and where we are today, in 2016, we formed one of the first generative AI companies. So David Yang, the ultra high net worth guy, was my partner in that thing. We built it up, and we actually turned into remote workforce management. And but it's interesting. So when you're going down through these challenges, number one is, how was it coming from Chicago to you're living in San Francisco, or are you living in Chicago now?
Both. I have 4 kids, and so I didn't want to uproot my family. So I go to San Francisco Monday mornings and fly home Thursday night. So have a small apartment there and there every week, but didn't want to uproot the kids.
Yeah, I'll actually be at one of the family office events tomorrow myself. I'm flying out from Palm Beach, and I go out there quite a bit too. How is it having that dual kind of life? How does it feel?
I actually, for my family, it's always worked really well. So my wife and I have a great partnership. I had the fortune or misfortune when I was at Stats to be doing a lot of global operations. And so I was flying to Europe monthly and India quarterly and China annually. And so compared to those sorts of trips, a routine schedule where I leave Monday after the kids get to school, I come home Thursday night in time to be there for Friday morning drop off. We've got a good working system. It creates boundaries. And frankly, and I know this, look, we'll speak frankly, I think every CEO of every early stage company is partially insane. Gotta be there's always a hard time delineating work and life. And so this actually gives me the mental headspace to go put those 13, 14-hour days in guilt-free Monday through Thursday without a lot of kind of feeling like I'm missing. And then when I'm home, I'm heavily engaged with family. And so this is just a routine that's worked out really well for us, and we've done a few times throughout the course of my career.
Yeah, no, when I was doing my thing, I was on a month and off a month. Well, 2 weeks to a month, and I would come back and forth. And it was weird coming back because it took me a couple of days to get back in the swing of things. And once I went back, it took me a few days to get back. But yeah, you get used to it. So what inspired you to join Voxel, and what do you feel passionate about in its mission?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. So one, the tech is great. Computer vision is exciting. I was working in computer vision, not as far back as you with AI, but 10, 11 years ago. And so computer vision has come so far technically in the last decade. So getting in that space was really, really cool. But more importantly, I grew up in Indiana, right? I'm the first person in my kind of immediate family with a real office job. And so a lot of my cousins, aunts, uncles, they work in industrial agriculture. Like these are the types of things that they live, breathe. And my family reunions were in a small town outside of South Bend, Indiana. And so these are people that are underserved. These are a significant part of the U.S. workforce that doesn't have the investment in tech that knowledge workers do. So that's one. But I think two, more personally, my cousin had a pretty significant workplace accident. And it had years of impact to his life, right? It wasn't just the in the moment and then the recovery, it's all the residual when you have that sort of physical impact in a space that has constrained opportunity. And so you see that and you're like, one, there's a heart and mission orientation, but two, from the business side, these are millions of workers who are underserved from tech. And the last thing we need is yet another Gen AI tool for engineers to go search for code. Who cares? couldn't be less interested in that. This is much more exciting for me from a kind of personal and business perspective.
It's interesting because some of the tools we're working on, tools that you'll see in like a year from now. And at GSD, we have 176 companies inside of our portfolio. We're a family office, an operational family office, but it's amazing. But how can you elaborate? Can you elaborate on the technology behind Voxel and really what is this computer vision platform all about?
Yeah, for sure. And one thing, Gary, that I forgot to say up front, GSD is one of our corporate core values. So I'm a big fan of the name of the venture firm. So I love that. I thought I would shout that out up here. I take it GSD to every company I go to is a core value. It's something I live and breathe.
You learn about that, right? Because people they talk about things a lot, but they don't get it done. And because you've seen on both sides, especially when you're in Iraq, right? You can't screw up or nothing good happens, right? You got to take a laser approach to it, and you learn those lessons when you're in difficult situations, right?
That's right. Fast action matters so much. But yeah, just wanted to call that out. I love the name. It's one of my favorite. My favorite VC name out there, actually. And I don't say that just because you're here. I told the outreach that too. But Voxel itself, how does the tech work? So we leverage existing cameras. So we're a pure AI software company, no hardware. So we tap into the existing camera streams. We've built our own proprietary set of models, AI models that are focused on all manner of health and safety issues, vehicle issues, speeding, collisions, no stops, near misses, human issues, whether people are improperly bending or overreaching or not wearing their protective gear, area controls or people in parts of the facility they're not supposed to be in. Is a door improperly secured? Is someone in the parking lot for too long, right? And so really we do this at a camera level and we leverage all that existing infrastructure. So there's CapEx expense, there's no painful hardware implementations. And we're typically live in about 3 to 5 days from a technical perspective. It takes a couple of weeks with the back and forth and scheduling and everything, but it's a really rapid onset delivery. And the other thing that's really important for us is it's not just about seeing the problem. Don't get me wrong, I think we have best-in-class computer vision and our models kind of far exceed our competitors in the space. But the more important thing is what do you do then? And so then we've built a whole application on top of that, allowing people to collaborate, tag, make sure they're resolving incidents. They can mark things from a trends perspective. Because it's not just enough, sad to say, but truthful, it's not just enough to make workplaces safer. That's great. But if that was the case, we'd basically shut down the economy, right? We'd slow everything down, be highly risk adverse. It's how do you make them safer but maintain bottom line and productivity, right? And that's a big thing we're focused on is how do we show results, right? How do we lower claims? How do we make sure that your OSHA fines are diminishing? How do we make sure your productivity is increasing? And at the same time, workers are safer. And that's why we take that next step to build the application on top of computer vision itself.
No, that's interesting. It's, we worked with a couple computer vision companies inside of GSD. So GSD is my family office, right? So we find those companies. It's quite interesting. And you look at it, it's going to go back through the supply chain. It's not just where you are. Everything's going to connect together, Vernon. Everything. Yeah, everything. We've been building omni-channel engines, by the way. So these engines you can put anywhere. Imagine if you put it into a field, right? And for farmers, all the way through crop yield and optimization, all the way to the table. And then what happens with, it's not only about, and this, right? Your computer vision can be used anywhere.
That's right. Anywhere. And that's the thing. I actually totally agree. So computer vision, I think in 2 to 3 years is going to be ubiquitous in every part of the supply chain. I talked to an agriculture CV company too, and like again, Indiana roots, farm roots. Like I get it. It's a space that matters for sure.
Well, it matters because by 2050 we have to double the food supply, and we can't increase the number of cattle because 26% of the methane gas from cows. So what do we do?
Right.
We need to increase crop yield. Then we got all this crazy weather. I worked on a weather forecasting company back in the early 90s with a guy who was a student of Albert Einstein at Princeton. The guy was 70-some years old. We better figure this out because nothing good's going to happen. So it's not just about workers' safety. It's about all kinds of different things. And guess what? We have 8.1 billion people on the planet. We've got an estimated 13 billion by the end of the century. What are we going to do? We're going to have all kinds of issues with global climate change and how to be able to help them.
That's right. And I totally agree. And the other thing on that too is I think, and look, robotics are interesting, but everybody's so focused on robotics for the purposes of automation or human replacement. But if you actually think about your point of the 8.1 billion people, like this whole AI revolution is about how do we optimize the livelihoods of those people? And I think sometimes that gets forgotten, right? To your point, like how do you produce more food in a more efficient fashion without destroying the environment and the overall ecosystem? How do you do that without destroying the economy? Right, like we can't wake up and there's 15 robber baron AI CEOs who control 100% of the wealth of the company, right? Or, you have to think about like how this is all interconnected, which is to me, I always make sure to remind the team, AI is the tool to help us get to the outcome. AI is not the outcome itself, right? Like never get caught up in just designing beautiful tech because beautiful tech with a no end purpose is frankly either harmful or worthless, right? So how do you build it with an end purpose in mind?
I agree. The one thing that we've been doing for the last 2 years, we've been building multi-agent, multimodal large language models. We create 14 of them as a team working together like a think tank to solve problems. When you got tools like Claude that can be 1,000 times better in mathematics than ChatGPT, imagine what the possibilities are when they're helping each other, right?
That's right.
Taking care of the hallucinations. And when we take and apply those to settings like yours, and then we put things like empathy and compassion in. So imagine this. Imagine you see somebody, but then a robot goes out and sees somebody hurt and helps. A robot goes out on a production line and says, listen, let's take care of this. Or they take over the job, right? And the person does a more high value task. It's going to be unbelievable how things are going to be optimized, right? It's just a forefront. Can you talk about specific case studies where Vox's solutions have really dramatically reduced workplace accidents and operational costs? You don't have to name names, but just describe what those scenarios look like.
Yeah. So I'll give 2 examples. So we had one customer that had a significant problem with vehicle safety, what's called OSHA recordables, right? So they have a vehicle safety issue. People are having near misses or collisions. It has to be recorded. Then OSHA comes in and expects all kinds of residual fines downstream. But the bigger thing is when a vehicle issue happens, those are usually catastrophic, right? That's not a guy hurting his shoulder, and I'm not diminishing that. That sucks. I've had multiple knee surgeries. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it's a very different thing when you get run over by a forklift and lose a leg or lose a limb. And so what we were able to do was not only identify the specific parts of the facility where they had a high density of that, right? What shift was it happening, in what part of the facility, at the end of what lane or what aisle. Once we were able to triangulate that, we actually helped them redesign flow. And so that way they could change how and where their forklifts were operating, more visible stop signs in a few areas, better demarcated pedestrian walkways. And they saw a 91% reduction in potential reportable incidents. So not only were we able to say like, hey, you have a problem, but here's how you actually fix the problem. And that problem led to some environmental changes and industrial engineer changes that actually frankly had an impact on their productivity. The beautiful thing now is that customer, who's a Fortune 50 retailer, is now expanding our product to every one of their distribution centers. So great results for them, great results for us. Another example is we also see the highest volume of workplace accidents and injuries are ergonomics. Right, just someone repetitive motion over and over again, hurting a back, hurting a shoulder, hurting a knee. And so we're able to, again, help them not just see where those are occurring, how severe are they, how frequent are they, what shifts are they, but then we've had an example where we saw someone where there's significant problems of improper bending. Just guys like lifting over, no legs, all back, hoisting these boxes onto the belt. And all we did was a simple heat map, identified it, and they put in a lift table. So it went from a one-step lift to a two-step lift. And they saw about a $2.2 million across their entire company over 18 months, $2.2 million in reduced workman's comp claims. Not only they save a ton of cash.
Fantastic. It's fantastic. Actually, the possibilities are limitless.
It is. There's so much potential.
How do you go down through, how do you see AI transforming the future of industrial workplaces beyond safety? So we talked about a little bit, such as sustainability and workforce development, because what you're doing those tools can be put into a whole different light. I'm sure you're thinking about those things.
Yeah, energy efficiency is a big one, right? I mean, particularly when you think about like cold storage, there's so much energy going into cooling those large refrigerated warehouses. And so much energy and efficiency associated with that. And a lot of those problems can be identified through computer vision. And not just the cold storage, just in general energy efficiency, lighting, optimizing. I have a good friend who I love, who has an energy consulting business, and he works with like major footprint companies. And we always talk about the tech, and he's like, yeah, in 3 years, what I've been doing and making millions of dollars on for my career is going to turn into just an AI generated report. So at least he has the cognizance to know that. But I think it's a great example. But more bigger picture, I think warehouse of the future, distribution center of the future, rather than an industrial engineer walking around with a clipboard, having to be able to identify areas and pain points and friction. You're going to have facts. You're going to know where people walked. You're going to know where vehicles traversed. You're going to know where goods have flowed, and you're going to be able to make actual environmental decisions that optimize the throughput, but in a way that is not optimizing throughput by just increasing automation, but optimizing throughput by design, intentional design. And so I think that's just really exciting because that unlocks in the future, like the dark warehouses and whatnot. The more intelligence you have on how to design a warehouse, the more likelihood that future and reality becomes. So there's just so much. There's so much potential. I'm sure, Gary, you know as many companies as you're invested in. There's almost limitless opportunity. And so that's why, again, like
I think the thing is, companies like yours, these companies, we see them all the time. There's so much potential. People don't get it because they're not. They don't put their ear to the ground and see what's going to happen. Everything's going to come together as one. It's
that's right.
The phrase, a gestalt, the sum of the parts equal the whole, Vernon, and it's going to happen because we're going to, when you look at it, what is it all about? We have too much data on the planet. We got about 176 zettabytes. People say, what does that mean? That means you took DVDs or CDs and stacked them one on top of another. Today, it would go 128 times between Earth and the Moon. It's growing 70% per year. 70. So data is the thing. And if we master the data with incredible companies like yours, imagine what the possibilities are. Then if we use like multi-agent, multimodal large language models with robotics tied together, everything changes. You got not only highly optimized, but, I've written a lot of articles about this stuff, but you have a more humanistic approach to it. You care about the workers, like your grandmother loves you and cares about you, right?
Yeah.
And
that's right.
We need to move in that environment. In fact, twice I've spoken at the UN about technology as a tool for peace. And it was very interesting actually talking to them. I won't get into political stuff, but it was very interesting. And I think, speaking to a lot of CEOs and founders of some very, very large companies around the world, they're looking at how can we make our lives better using tools like yours to be able to help. Because guess what? If somebody does hurt their back, now imagine if it's tied in, all of a sudden there's an alert done to the company doctor to be able to tell them or sit down, or somebody that's a workplace consultant comes in or coordinator talks to them, say, listen, do this a little differently. Maybe you have a little pain here. Let's help. Take care of it before it's an issue. These kind of things are incredibly important. And, we're on the cusp of a revolutionary, evolutionary change in our lives. And it's going to happen because of companies just like yours that are right there, continuously sensing, picking it up and making those, and more importantly, proactively going out and helping before it's a problem.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I will make one small political statement. I think one thing that, without getting into political parties or affiliations, I think it's most governments in the world, maybe there's like one or two exceptions, they have to get on board with this much faster. The way they've procured and interacted with technology in the past is so antiquated for how the pace of evolution and just evolvement of these products that we can't keep up. And so I do think there's a strong signal that public and private have to come together for the betterment of national defense, but also peace creation, right? And if we do these laborious 10-year RFPs, like, guys, we're talking about 1980 procurement. We've got to think about things differently. We have to think about how these two very different ecosystems of high growth, rapid tech, willing to take risks, and slow, methodical bureaucracy interact for the betterment of all.
It was interesting because I had written a paper and I said if we took quantum computing and artificial intelligence and we focused on it like we did in the 50s during the Cold War, we and use it in a good way to be able to help us, and we can change the world. It's crazy. We have all these, I'm out in Palo Alto a lot, and I'm out there. Why don't we use these technologies to be able to help us make the world a better place, and start right here in the U.S.? It's not to be bad. It's like, why not use what we have? We have some of the smartest. Look at what you're doing, Vernon. It's unbelievable. Why doesn't the government have it inside of their own facilities? Right?
Soldier readiness. I mean, going back to my roots in the Army, like, most injured soldiers is not in combat, right? And that's what we're very presenting. So you want to talk about combat readiness as an actual Department of Defense. We could help with that instantaneously, but there's just this resistance to tech. And I think everything you're saying really, really excites me, Gary. I'm really excited about 50s and 60s American investment and how you think about the infrastructure and the interstate system and NASA and that propelled the economy forward, society forward in a very meaningful way. And if we all pulled our heads out of our butts and started to partner on this, and to your point, Silicon Valley and the government came together, we could have that next evolutionary turn of kind of American economy easily. I
agree. I hear, I'm a patriot and I believe in this country, and we have a lot of opportunities. Sometimes we forget how good we are, and sometimes we forget about using it. Listen, we're coming up to the top of the show. Closing thoughts and how do people get a hold of you? And Vernon, I'll stay online then after we're done with the show and we can speak a few minutes.
Yeah, so the website is Voxel, VOXELAI.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of the company. My name is pretty unique, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Vernon O'Donnell out there, so you can send me a direct message. Always happy to chop it up and talk AI and safety. And I would just leave with kind of something you and I touched on, Gary. It's not just about the tech, it's about what you do with it. And so that's the thing that we're so focused on is building the best models out there to identify these problems, but then how do we actually impact workers to send them home safer, to make sure when they're 50s and 60s, they're still mobile and functional and able to play with their grandkids. And at the same time, we're returning results to the businesses and not forgetting that those two things have to work in concert with each other.
Now, I appreciate Vernon taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. It's really appreciated. And thanks to all my audience for joining one more time. And I want to thank you. We're at 1 million views, and I really appreciate all that for the shows. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm the host of Top Global Startups. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. I'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. Thanks, everybody. Click and subscribe. Thanks.